Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you are doing great and staying safe. Welcome to a new supplier webinar, Increasing Online Authority Through Public Relations. I'm your host, Devesh, and we have an amazing session lined up for you today with CIPR. But before we start, let's do a quick AV check. Please let me know in the chat window if you can see my screen and you can hear me clearly. I'm waiting for your responses. Okay. Thank you, Marzena. Thank you, Catriona. Nice, great. So let's start. So as you know, most digital marketers consider PR a part of traditional marketing services, but nothing could be further from the truth. In recent months, we have seen a huge increase in the request for PR suppliers to not only assist with the overall brand perception of clients, but also to add to their digital marketing efforts. This gap in our e-marketplace is now filled by CIPR, who have been in the business for a very long time, for over a decade. As a WSI agency, they have seen both sides of the marketing. They will take you through examples, approaches, and most importantly, how to sell PR to your end clients. Hey, Peter. Hey, Christina. Peter will be leading today's webinar. And just a quick introduction on Peter. Peter has been in this business for over 20 years, and he has worked with political and business leaders across Canada in a public and stakeholder relationships capacity. He has had the pleasure of working with 5 provincial premiers, dozens of elected officials from all levels of the government. Peter and his better half, Christina, they run CIPR, and as you all know, they are also a WSI agency. So without further delay, I will give it to you, Peter, and you can take it up.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Perfect. Great. So thanks everybody for joining today. Thanks for the introduction, Devesh. I appreciate it. I will be presenting today. My better half, as Devesh described her, was quite busy for the last couple of weeks. So I got the opportunity to present to you guys today. So today we're going to be talking about increasing online and offline authority through public relations. I'm going to spend some time talking about both. In terms of an agenda, I will just go to the next slide here. There we go. So really, I think the best way to go through PR and understanding what it is going through the what, why, who, when, how of PR. Really outlining kind of sort of talking about PR from all angles and giving people an opportunity to see firsthand what's involved, what it's about, and I've included in this presentation a lot of different examples because I think that it's probably easier to show than to tell. So that is going to be our agenda for today. Certainly, if you have questions, I think maybe it might be easiest to leave them for the end, and I'll make sure that there's time at the end to talk through questions. And then if there's any questions we didn't get to, I'd be happy to answer those afterwards as well. So starting off with what is public relations, and this definition is a few lines that I pulled out of Wikipedia because I thought they were pretty relevant. So it's the practice of deliberately managing the release and spread of information between an individual or an organization and the public. It really aims to create or obtain coverage for free, also known as earned media, rather than paying for marketing or advertising. And I thought this last line was the most interesting, and I'm going to spend some time kind of walking through what this means. But in the 21st century, advertising is also part of broader PR activities. So we'll dive into what that means in a couple slides. I found this kind of slide, which I thought was kind of interesting and intriguing, so I thought I'd share it. So, this slide explains marketing as me telling my wife that I'm a great lover, my girlfriend, or whoever. Advertising is me repeating the same thing over and over again until maybe she'll believe it. And then public relations is maybe one of her girlfriends telling her what a great lover I am, which I don't know if that'll turn out well for me or not, but that's sort of a good way to explain what PR is really having others tell your story on your behalf, hopefully saying the things you want them to say about you. And then really branding is, that person sort of kind of coming to terms with that and sort of, coming to their own conclusion that, yes, I am a great lover. So I thought it was a cute little slide to share here. This is a slide from the last presentation I gave, and really it just sort of kind of brings home the point that PR is all about trust and authority. And this slide just shows that having other credible voices speak on behalf of your brand helps to build trust and authority. And obviously an industry expert, somebody that is trusted within an industry is seen as the most credible voice. A person like yourself, so maybe a client or a client that's similar to a prospect that you're selling to, obviously it has a lot of influence. A brand employee, interestingly, has quite a bit of influence. So if somebody feels positive about their company and says good things, and that obviously reflects well for people. The company's founder, brand technical experts, community heroes. Interestingly, celebrities and brands, brand CEOs, that's the one that always stands out as sort of interesting to me, because for some reason the CEO is just less credible than the founder or an employee. So anyways, kind of interesting there. So it's all about building trust and authority. But PR today, while the definition of PR that I shared is the same as it was for the last 100 or more years, the definition of media has really changed a lot, especially in the last 20, 25 years since the internet has come into play. Earned media from traditional media sources is still important and is a major part of PR today, but it's a smaller part. Today, obviously, with the advent of social media, with lots of bloggers out there, podcasts, online publications, forums, and all of these different communications channels that exist are all opportunities for digital marketers to sort of get PR for their clients. And they're really interesting opportunities because often these are really niche little forums or publications or blogs or podcasts or whatever that are really targeted and have a really targeted audience. So, rather than, maybe getting a really broad and wide media hit for a client, getting them on as a guest on just a really targeted niche podcast might be a massive PR win for your client. And so really the world of PR has changed a lot and has become a lot more complex than it used to be. It used to be an agency to media relationship that's now become much more of an agency to sort of, multiple different types of media channels type of relationship. And it allows companies now to have a much more direct conversation from a PR perspective with their end users than they were able to in the past. In the last presentation, I talked about earned, paid, and owned media, and a couple questions came up as a result of that. So I thought I'd add some definitions here just to clarify what this means. In the next few slides, I'm actually going to give some examples from one of my clients to give you sort of a real life example of what these things are. But really, owned media is everything under your control. So your website. At CIPR Communications, we always say that your website is your home, and all of the different things that point to your home are like directions for people to get home. And so that's really the thing that's most in your control. But it could be your blogs, it could be your e-newsletters, catalogs, your social media, anything that you own and control is an example of owned media, although social media is a bit of a hybrid one. It's a bit of an interesting one. Paid media is media you pay for. Traditionally, this has been advertising, PPC, and other things. But today, with the sort of with the explosion of these different media types, it really is a lot more complicated and a lot more interesting in terms of the paid media world. So I'll give some examples in future slides, but things like advertorials, paid blogs, media release syndication, sponsored content, and there's many, many more. And the world of paid media and the world of earned media are really becoming harder to distinguish between, making the PR world that much more interesting and making the opportunities for your clients that much more robust. And then earned media really is the thing that everybody's after and chasing, which is really all content and conversations about your brand that have been created by someone else and published somewhere other than your own channels. So he is a great lover, trust me. That's a great piece of earned media right there. So just some examples. So this is owned media. So in the last presentation, I did talk about my client, Last Frontier Heli Skiing. And so we did a PR push for them because they, as a result of the COVID situation, had to basically pivot their business in order to make themselves attractive to Canadians. And so they did a 50% off heli skiing in 2020 for Canadians. as long as the borders remain closed, which looks like it's going to be the case. So this is basically a landing page that was created for to support the PR piece. And so, essentially this is a perfect example of owned media. And PR is most successful when you add a component of our own media where you can put a lot more information and more interesting information. And then you maybe get some paid media opportunities and you get some earned media opportunities. So this is just one example. This next slide is just sort of the next part of their landing page that they created for this offer. And as you can see here, they got really cheeky, they got really interesting, they made it fun. And actually, interestingly, when I reached out to media on this and media went to their website, they were like, wow, really, really like the creative that was used, really like the approach. So essentially, they looked into their crystal ball and said, no matter what happens with COVID, we got to go skiing. So we're putting this deal out. And it was just a really fun and interesting way to get the story out there and to get their community enthusiastic and jazzed about what they were doing. So another great example of what owned media is. Next is paid media, and as I mentioned, paid media is getting more and more complicated and more interesting. And so this is basically when we did the Last Frontier heli skiing media pitch. One of the things we reached out to, one of the organizations we reached out is Post Media, which owns many of the newspapers and online publications in Canada, most of the popular ones. And they created this pitch deck for us to talk about, what we can help you push your story out using native advertising. And so native advertising is basically a type of advertising that looks like it matches the content that is on whatever that publication is or that platform is. So in the case of a Post Media, native advertising would be an advertorial or some kind of piece of content that looks like it's not sponsored, but in fact it's a paid piece. And so in this case, they offered us a couple different prices. One price for if we provide the content, another piece would be if they needed to build the content, and then basically pushing it out, putting it on as a newspaper article, pushing it out through their social media channels, and all of that would have been for a price. Here is kind of how they pitched themselves from the perspective of their audience and their price. So they say that through both digital and print, Post Media reaches 20 million people per month, 67% of all Canadians. So obviously a lot of reach for these guys. And they basically said, let's do one article, a native advertising article, and through our native network, so their own networks, they guaranteed reach of 86,100 people, and through social amplification, another 125,000 people. So 211,000 impressions for $5,000. So it's one of those things that you need to consider in the context of everything you're doing from a digital perspective, but certainly a really attractive way for a brand to get their brand story out there, get a lot of reach, really broad reach. And a lot of people would not be able to tell that this is a paid piece. It would look like an earned media piece, which then adds credibility and trust to the piece, which is nice. Here's a couple of examples of other paid pieces that came in as a result of us reaching out to various media on this particular one. I included these two because they were interesting. So these guys, Ski Press in Quebec, looking for, they just bought Ski Press, the magazine, and the online publication. And they said, why don't we do some creative initiative to include a contest to win a trip? Let's get Air Canada and WestJet involved. Let's get an Olympian involved, and let's make a contest for some kind of really cool all-in trip to get basically some exposure for this brand. So really kind of an innovative way to do a paid media piece. That could potentially get a good results. Additionally, this Skiboard Canada guy basically said, hey, I'd love to cover a story on you guys, but I'd need to go with heli skiing first to sort of see what it's all about. So, can I come? and I'll take videos and I'll take pictures and I'll write a story for our publication. So again, it's sort of a paid media piece in the sense that it's really a fan tour, a familiarization tour for the media to go on, so that they can actually write a piece based on firsthand experience, which obviously would lend itself and have a lot of credibility for the audience. I included this one. This is actually a response I got back today for a piece I was doing for another client, a completely different client. And I thought it was interesting because what they included on here is like, we have this audience, 45% of people between these ages. This is the size of our audience. For 150 bucks, we can basically, do a sponsored post and share it. And what I thought was interesting about this one is they specifically said, we can offer you a do follow link to help with your SEO efforts. And here's our domain authority. Here's kind of what we're about from a SEO perspective. So this one was particularly interesting to me, so I shared it with you because obviously there's the opportunity to get an article written for 150 bucks or 125 bucks, or depending on sort of what the client decides to go with, which isn't too much money, but also to get some links to help with SEO efforts. So particularly interesting piece. Finally, here are some earned media pieces that we got as a result. We got many earned media pieces from this particular engagement. But basically, these are articles that were written about the deal of a lifetime. Canadians get half off with Last Frontier Heli Skiing Adventures. Full article written in this publication. Didn't have to pay for it. It was sort of a good fit for their magazine. Timing-wise, it was a good fit. So, they went and wrote the article in their magazine, their online publication. Vancouverscape is another sort of online publication, and they were more than happy to write an article, included several pictures. Really nice piece. Obviously, the client was very happy. We were able to get many pretty good earned media pieces for this particular client. So just an example of the 3 different media types so you can sort of understand what the differences are. So the next question is why public relations? This is also a slide from previous, but really helps to establish personal relationships and trust with stakeholders. And it's important, while I talk a lot about media in public relations, it's not the only audience, and it's actually sometimes not the most important audience. So I'll show some examples later on, but your stakeholders could include your customers, your vendors, industry association groups, advocacy groups, bloggers, influencers, government, surrounding businesses and communities. And then there's one missing from this list, which I can add later, which is your employees. They're also an important stakeholder group, and sometimes you really need to think about how to communicate to them in a way that's going to keep trust and keep them happy in terms of things you're doing and changing in your business. So the other things that public relations do is increase brand credibility, and they help basically they help companies build a reputation. If done well, public relations can change the way people think about a business. It can enhance online presence and SEO efforts. I'm going to actually go into a couple slides in a couple slides here about the SEO impact of PR, because a couple questions came up related to that. And then it can increase profits, sales, and leads for sure. And I can tell you, my name is on a lot of press releases because I'm the media contact. I get calls daily from people saying, hey, I'm calling to get whatever, or, hey, I'm calling to see if these people are hiring or whatever. So, people see these press releases and they think they're calling the company, they're calling me, and I'm passing them along. So it definitely helps profits, sales, and leads. The practice of public relations is really deliberately building a positive reputation. And I want to say that it's both an offensive and defensive strategy. So when a company has a really strong positive reputation, if something bad happens, it really, really can help a company get through a crisis situation. If you don't have a good, strong reputation, you're sort of alone on an island. You haven't done the job of building your advocates. You haven't done the job of building the people that are going to come behind you and support your brand. And it can be a really lonely and scary place. And so that's why I call it an offensive and a defensive strategy. People often create narratives in their minds about a brand. Whenever you interact with a brand, you create an impression in your mind. If it was a good interaction, you'll say that was a great brand and a great experience, and I'm going to go back. If it was a bad one, they might be dead to you forever. And it could sometimes only be just one experience that can create that impression in your mind. So PR can really help you to ensure that you do everything as a brand to make that as a positive a narrative as possible. And then, as I mentioned before, it can drive growth, but it can also help a lot when things go bad. So I've already mentioned that before. So I'm going to just spend a couple slides. This is really not meant to be the point of the presentation, but a couple of questions came up when I presented 2 weeks ago about sort of, you put out a press release and you get a number of different links. And a few people said, well, but those are no follow links. And so I'll say that most links generated from press release syndication are no follow links, not all of them. So there are some follow links that come out. And I'm going to let you go ahead and read on your own and sort of make your own conclusions. But Neil Patel and Ahrefs both write blogs about no follow links, and they make the argument that no follow links can actually help you to generate do follow links. So I personally think, and I've seen evidence, and I'm actually a believer that SEO or PR can help SEO. However, I do that were made that PR is a completely separate service, and so I would just say that the SEO benefits of PR might be a bonus, not a core feature, and not a core selling feature. Although I'll show some slides where I think maybe it has more impact than than we appreciate. And I'll just say here's a quote from Neil Patel: as it turns out, no follow links can help you leverage that SEO potential, and they don't do it indirectly but directly. More than likely, since Google knows about no follow links, they've worked something into their algorithm to still provide benefit to the reference pages despite that no follow HTML tag. So that's from Neil Patel. I will let people come to their own conclusions about this. However, I did want to share these couple screens here. Sorry, these are maybe a bit hard to read, but these are on the left are two of our clients that literally do nothing but PR. As you can see in the trend lines in terms of their organic traffic, really in both cases, when the trend line started going up is when they basically hired us to start doing PR for them. In both cases on the left side, these companies do zero with respect to SEO. Both of them have, a sort of reasonable authority score. The one on the top, Steel River Group, actually does quite a bit of PR consistently, and so their authority score is a little bit higher. And the one on the bottom literally did one press release with us that got international coverage and got a lot of news and was a big media story. But literally have nothing else. They've never posted anything else on their website, have no on-site SEO. So I think it's hard to conclude that PR does not help SEO. So I'm going to leave it there. I'd be happy to have a full debate with people and a full conversation. And I'm actually planning to do some research deeper into this topic because I think it's an interesting one. So why do public relations? So this is the company that we're working with right now, currently called iCor Blood Services. So iCor provides basically mobile lab services for people. Primarily, they actually started as a company not intending to do COVID antibody testing, but obviously COVID happened, so they started adding that as a service. And so they've done 2 press releases with us. And so when you Google their name, you'll see that basically the first 3 things you see is them and the 2 press releases we issued for them. So as you can see, this really gives them a lot of good brand exposure and brand credibility. So somebody obviously reads these 2 press releases from the Newswire. This is a credible third-party source, and so this is a really good example of what PR can do for a brand. This was a brand new brand in like January, February of this year, and they're ranking well on Google. They're very visible, and as you'll see in the next slide, their business is exploding. So here's another search I put in for them: COVID antibody test Calgary. As you can see, they do come up first for that search term, but they're also the CBC News article and the CTV News article come up pretty high in search. And so, if I'm a person looking at this company and deciding whether they're a credible company, now I have a third-party verified source talking about their services as well, which again, obviously adds brand trust and brand credibility, and I think makes them more visible in search. That sort of is a good example. Here's just in the very bottom, there's a couple texts that I got from this client. Literally the first one, Hockey Canada called, tons of new corporate clients on board, and we've done 54K in revenue in the last 7 days. That was 2 days after we issued a press release where literally they just exploded. And then basically trying to open office in Medicine Hat, Red Deer in the next 2 weeks, and a second in Calgary, total mayhem. So this guy is over the moon. PR has been an incredibly good thing for him. And really, I think PR is a great strategy for a new business looking to break through in a crowded marketplace where, where other services like SEO and may take a little bit of time. PR is definitely a great way to kind of get some quick brand exposure and quick credibility. So the other question that came up quite a bit is, who is PR best for? So I'm going to start off with a couple of sellout answers, which is that every company engages in PR every single day, whether they know it or not. And most companies don't do it deliberately. Really, PR includes the stories that companies tell about themselves and the stories that others tell about companies. So a company's sales materials, elevator pitches, the testimonials that they get from other people, company presentations, employee meetings, these are all really forms of PR. So I think it's important to think about PR from a broad perspective when you ask the question of who is this good for, because in my opinion, every single company should be thinking about, at a minimum, high-level PR or a corporate communication strategy and some agreed upon key messages or common language. What is the language we use to describe ourselves? How do we talk about our business? How do our employees refer to our business? These are all things that are PR related. And so, we'll get into the PR services in a couple minutes, but, really one of the main services, and that's something I would recommend for almost any business out there, is a PR and corporate communication strategy and the development of key messages. It's a really critical thing that people sort of have some pre-thought out messaging for what they're all about. And what we say and how we say it really should be part of every company's DNA and should not be and should be thought through. Now, the more specific answer a little bit is, while every company could use PR and try to get some earned media, there are some industries that have traditionally used PR more. So technology companies, PR is a major factor in a lot of technology companies. Cannabis companies and pharmaceutical and healthcare. So cannabis specifically I can speak to because we do a lot of PR for cannabis. There's a lot of marketing restrictions for cannabis. There's a lot of things they can't do. Social media is very challenging. So PR is actually one of the greatest tools available to the industry because there are no restrictions on what media and third-party sources can say about a brand. So getting and earning media for cannabis pharmaceutical companies is a great avenue. Energy and resource companies use PR and have used PR quite well. Financial services, a lot of consumer products companies and manufacturing companies as well. But I will say that earned media success is less about industry and more about having something interesting to share. And that's especially true with modern PR and media. If you think about back to the first slides with the bloggers and the podcasters and all these cool media people out there now, there's an opportunity potentially for a lot of different companies to sort of share their story in ways that just didn't exist before. So again, it's less about the industry, more about something to share. So when should we consider PR? Basically there's a couple of really great opportunities timing wise. When clients have something interesting to share, such as a new product or service or a new business launch, an event, a facility or an office opening is always a good opportunity for PR. Merger and acquisition, obviously a big one here in Canada. Synovus and Husky Energy, like multi-billion-dollar companies, tons of PR opportunities out of something like that. Awards and recognition, so anytime you get recognized or get an award of any kind, it's nice to share that. Maybe if you have new senior staff, such as a new CEO or new ownership or anything along those lines, great opportunity to announce to stakeholders a new change in direction. And then something timely or related to a current event. So again, one of my clients that we just issued a press release for today has a mobile escape business that now had to pivot because of COVID, and now they do escape mail. So you can basically order an envelope in the mail for an at-home escape room experience. And so, that's something that's really timely. We just issued a press release basically saying, this is a response to the COVID blues. If you're feeling locked down or feeling isolated, here's a great way to kill some time, right? Very timely. And I can tell you, I issued the press release this morning. I've gotten overwhelmed with media interested in telling the story. So timeliness is a very important factor to consider when thinking about PR in terms of the broader context of what's going on in the world. Here's just a couple of examples. So BitCrude is a client of ours where we've issued this press release. We issued a press release for them quite a while ago, and we're about to issue a second press release. So they've developed a technology that basically allows companies to transport bitumen, which is a sort of a form of oil that's taken out of the ground here in Alberta where we live, on trains. That's a huge deal. That's a massive deal. That's an industry-changing deal. Great opportunity for PR. Really something interesting to sell. We did, or to talk about. We did one press release for this client, got international coverage, and Christina can attest to the fact that she still gets calls every few days about sort of asking about investment opportunities, asking more about the technology. When's the next thing coming out? Massive good PR story right there. On the left here, this is Sundial, which is a cannabis company. I love the headline that came out of this one. Sundial hopes to turn Olds area into Silicon Valley of cannabis. Olds is a little town just near Calgary here that's got like, maybe 5,000 people in it. Obviously an office opening, big facility opening in a small town, that's a big piece of news, right? That's a big PR story. In this photo here, 2 out of the 4 people sort of cutting the ribbon are local politicians. So we invited local politicians, actually 3 out of the 4, the one's the mayor. So we invited local politicians to participate in the story. Obviously, inviting local politicians is a great way for media to also be interested because they're always following what's going on in politics. The story on the right here is another client of ours. So Shell, basically there was something called the Shell Employees Credit Union, changed their name to Spark the Energy Credit Union. This wasn't the most positive story in the sense that the article is more about Shell's name being removed from the credit union as a result of a larger oil sands sale. But nonetheless, it was a good sort of PR opportunity. People that live here in Alberta and understand the whole Shell story, I think would not see this as negative as maybe it comes across. So again, another good PR opportunity, a change of name, a major change in a company. I included this one. This is from December 2015. And the reason I included this one is because this is a really obscure publication, like really obscure, the American Oil and Gas Reporter. And this is a company called Production Plus, and they installed their 50th artificial lift system. And so, they were able to get some PR for this. But the reason I included this one is because this is a very specific targeted industry news piece. And so, not all PR should be thought about getting broad exposure, mass media, because like nobody in the world cares about Production Plus unless you live and work in the oil and gas industry, and unless you're in as a very specific part of that industry, in which case this is something probably that a lot of people will read that are the right target audience. And so it's just something to consider when you're thinking about PR opportunities. If it's a very niche client, there could be some really good niche publications to go after and to get your audience, to get your client in front of the right audiences. Here's just a couple more examples. So these are another client of ours is the Salmon Arm Roots and Blues Festival. Obviously things like their opening night and releasing of musicians that will be playing is a good media story. And then the one on the right is, we had to pivot because of COVID very quickly. And basically, they pulled off a online 3-day music festival that actually went really well. And so obviously it was related to the COVID pandemic and how a business is shifting. And we were able to generate quite a bit of good earned media as a result of that. So again, something that's timely, something that's sort of newsy and relevant to what's going on in the world is often a good opportunity to get PR exposure. All right, so getting into the meat of things now, what are PR services? So I'm gonna sort of walk through a couple of examples of all of these, but a couple of the high-level services that we offer, and there are some others, but the main kind of broad categories are communications and PR strategy and tactical plan. This is always the best place to start when possible. Because it really allows you to uncover a lot, learn a lot about the client, understand who they are, what they're trying to achieve. There's a PR and corporate communications retainer. It is possible to just issue an individual media release as a one-off, so that's definitely a service that's available. Key message development, media story pitching, long lead media research and pitching, media training, market research and polling, stakeholder consultation and facilitation, and crisis communication strategy and process. So next few slides are just going to be examples of all of these different things, just to kind of give you a firsthand example of what these things can look like. So what I've included in this slide is basically the table of contents from a PR strategy, just to give you a sense of what is included in a document like this. These documents vary in size depending on the sort of size and scope and and gravity of your client, I suppose. So this was sort of a smaller kind of client. But obviously there's an executive summary, strategic communications priority page, communications goals, target audiences, primary and secondary, communications process. So what is the process that companies follow internally in terms of developing communication, approving communications, key messages, spokespeople, a process for media relations. Okay, if we issue a press release and the media calls, what is our process for getting that media to the right person in terms of the right spokesperson? Are there any political sensitive communications tactics that we should be aware of? A little bit of on crisis communications. Another thing that's included is something called holding statements. So holding statements are basically statements that are pre-written to hold off press in case of a crisis. And so we include a few of those sample holding statements that are specific to a company. Various communications tactics that will be used, maybe some campaigns, tactical campaigns, and some tactical tools, and then finally metrics that will be used. So that gives you a kind of a sense of what's in a PR strategy, a communication strategy. This is a PR and communications tactical plan. So basically what this is, it's probably too hard for you to read, but at least it gives you a sense. In the left column, basically, in the case of this one, it's outlined by different priorities. So programs and services, communications and awareness, external relations are the priorities that have been identified in the strategy. And then basically in the columns are a quarter by quarter outline of what we're going to do on each priority from a communications perspective to essentially meet the communications and PR goals. And so often it starts off with just building assets and sort of updating websites and making sure that all your own media assets are where they need to be. And then, it gets usually into execution into the second, third, and fourth quarters after that. So each plan is different, and we create these on a spreadsheet so that month by month, when you're doing a communications and PR retainer, this becomes basically our guiding document. And literally with the client, you sit down once a month and you say, okay, these were all of our goals. Did we meet our goals? No. Why didn't we meet our goals? Did circumstances change? And then because it's on a spreadsheet, it's a live document that we can sort of update and change accordingly based on different changing circumstances. So next I'm going to get into media release syndication. And so there are a number of different companies out there who do media syndication. We use Cision. I think Cision is one of the most credible syndication companies out there. They're one of the better well-known ones out there. And so basically one of the things that when you syndicate a press release, we have as a PR agency access to this tool, which is basically a distribution tool. And so as you can see on this slide, there are a few different steps, but essentially you upload the press release, you determine which distribution networks you want to send it out to. And then the next slide here, you go, there might be some select targeting, specific targeting lists, like maybe the parental influencer list or the fashion and apparel influencer list, just depending on the client that you have. You select your targeting, and then you basically, you hit send, you figure out what time it's going to go out, and then what results out of putting something over syndication is a press release over the wire, which basically is, looks like this. It's from Cision, so it's clear. And then it creates this link for you, which basically is a shareable link that has the release in full text. And then in addition to that, when you select your lists you're going to send out to, oftentimes it can get picked up by multiple outlets as a result of the syndication. So this is just the WSI Named Top Agency award release that we sent out a couple weeks ago, and as you can see, it got picked up by 93 different websites in full text. So the exact text of the press release was picked up by 93 different online, basically, websites, and the potential audience based on the audiences of each of those websites is 53 million. Now, I always take that sort of number with a grain of salt, but that is the potential reach of that press release, and then it'll show you the different sources, so newspapers, online sites, broadcast media, all those types of things, and also the kinds of industries that picked it up. And then the next kind of on the right here shows what actually happened with the actual release on the Cision portal. So It got sort of viewed 2,300 times, 2,100 times just the release itself. The media, multimedia on the release got viewed 162 times. And out of that, 1,900 of those were public views, so non-institutional views. So it gives you a sense of sort of what happened with the press release after it hit the wire. This is a media contact database. So as a PR agency, we have a subscription to a database. And so what this database allows us to do is when we're following up with media on a story to pitch a story, it allows us to basically search by different interests. So here I did a search on bicycling in the United States, and I found 131 media contacts. And this is their pitching profile. You know, here it says contact via email. So I might add this person to my list if I have a client in the biking space looking to get a story sent out. And then I actually send an email. And this is an example of an email we did for Last Frontier, basically through the tool to pitch the media on the story. So this is the actual press release, and this is my pitch that went with the press release to try to get some earned media coverage for this client. Here is after you do the pitch. Here is some statistics that become available for you because this is pitched through the wire, through this media service, and so everything is tracked. And there's a couple cool things. So one, this was the second pitch I did. So I did this pitch to all of the people. So I went on the right here and I selected the people who clicked links, and I only pitched the second time to them. And that's why there's a 71% open rate, because obviously I pitched to people who showed interest in the past. And of those 71%, 20 people clicked, and I got a number of emails back and a number of basically leads for earned and paid media, which I showed you in previous slides.
Peter, it's just your favorite time checker here. I just wanted to let you know we're at 10:42.
Perfect. I will be done in about 5 to 6 minutes. And so there's a couple of other things you can do with these media databases. So in addition to sort of finding journalists who write on different specific things, you can search by editorial calendar. So that's what this slide is showing here. So these are kind of more long lead media pieces. So for example, I searched here gift ideas just as an example search, and I found 7 editorial calendars or 7 different publications writing on gift calendars that are listed in the system. Here's sort of a description of this one opportunity. There's a copy deadline. So, I might look at this one as an opportunity for a client, pitching a gift idea for the holiday season as an example. This slide is also, there's another search you can do. It's something called a HARO search. So HARO searches are a little bit different from the previous slide in that they are kind of things that are like coming up right away. This is like sort of real-time media opportunities. And so, I searched gift ideas in the HARO search, and I got 60 results. And, as you can see, I searched these like yesterday because that's when I put a lot of this presentation together. Yesterday, if I, would have pitched these people by 3 p.m., there's some chance that I could have gotten an earned media piece for my client. And the nice thing about this tool is you can send the pitch directly through this tool and right to the person looking for the pitch. And so, I can't guarantee that I'll get an opportunity, but at the very least, you expose your client to this person who writes on something related to your client. So if I wasn't able to get success with this pitch, potentially they might say, you know what, you missed the deadline, or I already got enough opportunities for this one, but in 6 months I'm going to be doing another article about X. Let's talk about pitching, getting you an earned media spot for that one, as an example. So I also included this slide here, which is basically an example of key message development. So a key message document is essentially a document that a company will use that becomes their sort of one-stop shop for all of their messaging. And I just included a couple things on here to show you what it's all about. It's obviously a table of contents, a spokesperson matrix. So this is sort of, examples of, this is different media opportunities come in. These are the different expertise that these different people can speak on. Do they speak different languages? Just a helpful matrix for, sort of understanding where to direct somebody if a media opportunity comes up. Here's the media screening criteria that we put forward to this client. So these are the types of questions that me as a PR expert might ask if a media opportunity comes in to determine whether the media opportunity is the right one for this client and or to decline an opportunity. And then this is just an example of a key message were many key messages in this document, but this one was an audience or public relations, so a broad key message. Steel River Group is an Indigenous owned and operated company experienced in constructions, heavy civil infrastructure, oil and gas industries. And then there are some sub messages. So maybe if you gave that first message and there were some follow-up questions, now you have some answers to give to those follow-up questions. So just an example of what a key message document could look like for your client. Another service for PR available is media training. And so basically what I provided here is just basically a sort of introductory slide for media training that we did, and as well as an agenda. So as you can see in the agenda, we cover things like communications theory, an overview of the media and the life of a media reporter. We provide interview tips and tricks. We work through key messages. We talk about pitching media and media requests. And we talk a little bit about body language and how to sort of have good body language when you're doing a media interview. Followed after that, we did on-camera training. And then followed after that, we actually reviewed the on-camera training. So we just had a video camera that we videotape people, and then we showed them the interviews after that and asked them to basically evaluate themselves. A very eye-opening experience for anybody that's ever been in it. Here's just a couple different slides just to give you a sense of what's inside a media training service. So, again, here's the life of a reporter. There are several slides about that. Here's a video that we show about how to avoid being misquoted. Here's on the right side some examples of bridging and blocking and sort of how you can sort of bridge and block the media to make sure that you're not answering their questions, because when you speak to the media, it's not always about answering their questions. It's about getting your message across, but it's about getting your message across in a way that's respectful and polite, and not sort of saying things like no comment, because that's not a good thing. And then finally on the bottom right are some examples of some media training on camera that we did with this particular client. Another service related to PR is polling. So polling is, in my opinion, a really important part of PR. So this is an example of a poll we did for North Coal, which is a mining company in British Columbia. Is some really good feedback for the client in terms of understanding how people feel about what they're doing. And then this slide in particular, from a communications perspective, is super useful, because it's basically the question was, as North Coal continues through its approval process, what's the most important priority that should be communicated with the public? And so as you can see, 51% said environmental management, and a whole 26% said economic jobs and opportunities. So that really is good insights for a company in terms of determining what to communicate in their messaging going forward. And then we also provide, obviously, as an agency, some insights and some of our editorial thoughts on what the poll results might mean for the company. Here's just another example of a poll we did, a resident sentiment poll for Northern British Columbia tourism. Just to give you an example, here on the bottom right is, kind of how we did the poll, the communities we reached out to. And then as a result of that poll with Northern BC Tourism, we actually did a full PR campaign kit, because Northern BC Tourism is a regional destination marketing organization that represents 13 different local community organizations. And so we created this tourism kit, campaign kit, to basically help, this was right when COVID happened, to help kind of drive the message that tourism matters, to create a positive impression about tourism, and to make sure that people understood the value of tourism in their communities when obviously everything was kind of hitting the fan. So, obviously here's a checklist that we provided. Here's an op-ed template that communities were able to use and adjust to their own communities. Here's an example press release. Looks like 2 example press releases. And then we also created some postcards and some social media badges. There's a couple other things we created, but just to give you a sense that sometimes PR requires not just a press release, but you might be doing a full campaign kit to arm your supporters with tools that they could use to then help you tell your story more effectively. Other examples of PR services is stakeholder presentations, so tourism Kamloops. You'll notice we do a lot of tourism clients. It's just one of our niche markets. But this is a tourism Kamloops gets funding from the city of Kamloops. And so this is a presentation they gave to City Hall. We helped them put this presentation together to help them basically, sell the fact that they should still be supported by the city. And then we did some press releases and some other things related to this particular campaign. Here's a great example of a credit union that we did some work for. They were moving into a new space, and they really wanted to do a good job getting excitement from their employees and answering all their employees' questions in a very thoughtful way. So, they did a fairly long and extensive PR engagement with us, and this is just a presentation that was given to their employees, along with a whole bunch of other PR tools, including a little move-in kit that everybody got at their desk, and a bunch of other cool features to really make people have a good feeling about the move. So again, employees are an important stakeholder, and there are ways to do PR for employees. The left side here shows a cannabis company investor deck. So certainly investors are an important stakeholder, and investor decks are a big thing that PR agencies do, and something that you can offer to your clients. Board presentation decks, we have a lot of experience dealing with and presenting to boards, and we've written quite a few presentation decks for CEOs to their boards. So that's another example of a PR service. These two examples here, so on the left-hand side, there's a community investment evaluation sort of form that we help create for a company. So this is basically the tool that the company then uses internally to determine whether they should invest in a community or in some kind of opportunity. And then this little sort of table on the right here is actually a company that or an organization that gets donors, and this is a bit of a flow for what happens if they get a donor, to make sure that the experience of the donor is a positive one. And these are sort of the sort of a flow of what you should do, how you should sort of thank them, the confirmation letter, and all of the details. So, a couple of examples of community investment, which is also an important part of PR. And finally, probably the slide most people have been waiting for is how much does it cost? PR services vary a lot, and it really depends. So these are very rough sort of general guidelines, but a PR strategy and tactical plan can be anywhere from 2,500 to 10 grand, really just depending on the size and scope of the company and the complexity of the company. PR retainers typically about 2,500 bucks a month to 10,000 plus. We've had bigger retainers than that. Single press release is 2,500 bucks to 5,000, depending on the complexity of the release, plus syndication, which could be anywhere from 1,200 to 5,000, just depending on how many different lists you decide to go out to. Story pitching, 1,500 to 5,000, depending on the level of effort needed. Research on long lead media opportunities. You see the pricing there. Market research and polling, I would say 12,500 is a good starting point. And I mean, research can go up a lot from there, but 12,500 you can get a really good poll and get some good information and data from. Media training starts at 5,000, goes to about 15,000. Crisis communications, there's a range there. And hourly support, if you need, is 225 bucks. I will say that all ICs get free advice from us as an agency. Opportunity research will help research the opportunity. We'll talk to you about whether it's a good fit, and we'll provide all the sales and support services you need. All of these prices are in Canadian, and it's not visible on this slide, but basically you get 20% off basically as part of the WSI network for those services. And that is the last slide right there. So I got 7 minutes left to answer any questions.
Great. So thanks, Peter. I think amazing information and some great examples you have there. And I'm sure this is a lot of information. So people will be watching recordings. So I will be uploading this to our suppliers webinar channel. You can access that from the e-marketplace. Just scroll down and it's the first icon. And now let's take some questions. So I think we still have Christina with us, right? So yes. Great. So yeah, so the first question is, how do you go about sourcing places to publish, and what are some of the best practices to get media sources, especially for local businesses?
Sure. So essentially the place to get the sources from is the media database. That's really kind of the gold mine in terms of understanding, because when you go through that database, and you pull up a list and it says there's 400 media people for a particular story. If you go into the pitching profile, it'll actually say often, I like writing stories about X, or I look for information about Y. And so really that's the gold mine. I will say that it's a best practice to first issue a press release over a wire service, and then to follow up with media pitches, because that adds some credibility to the effort. Because when it's posted over a wire service, that basically tells the media that this has been vetted by Cision, and that it's not like a spammy kind of like salesy piece. Cision has some very strict guidelines on what they'll post. So it's a good practice, basically. So first, pick a distribution list. Maybe it's a local distribution list, which is less expensive than a regional or national distribution list. And then, do that media database search, and then sort of pick the media you're going to follow up with. The other answer to the question is Google. It's not a bad thing to do some searching on Google to see, put in some search terms and find out who's writing about them. It's another good way to sort of understand what opportunities exist out there.
Thanks. The next question is by Mark Patton, and it is, do you have any case studies or work experience in the US?
In the United States?
Yes.
We don't really have any case studies as of right now. However, we've issued several in the last month or so. So we haven't traditionally done a lot of US PR, mostly because we haven't tried. But having said that, we are working on like 3, like 2 today and the WSI one. So we will have case studies available on those probably in the next 2 weeks. And what I will say though is that the rules are really the same. The country doesn't really matter that much, and the tools that we have access to are global. So we can get access to media both in both countries and countries around the world.
Peter, I'll just add to that and say there is one press case study within our profile on that supplier page right now for Melius Energy. And while the pitch was traditionally Canadian based, it did get a lot of pickup in the States through kind of more nationally syndicated, so BNN, some of those bigger hits. So in the interim, if you're looking for something US based, I'd look to that one, but you can reach out directly and we could provide those more recent examples too.
Thanks, Christina. So the next question is by Peter Burson. And Peter, let me know if I understand your question correctly. It is, in my tech industry, Fierce was a big publication, Fierce Telecom, Fierce Wireless, and all this news is pushed out for AP Wire and other wire services. Is this what CIPR is doing, or is your service different from what Peter is explaining?
Yeah, no, it is the same. It's the same service. Cision is just one of the service providers, wire service providers. And I will say that we use Cision. However, we have used several different syndication companies in the past. And if there's, if there's sort of a specific client that has a very specific need that needs a different syndicator, because that's what's used in the industry, we have experience and it's no problem to use a different syndicator as well. But I would say Cision is one of the top syndicators out there, and likely has a lot of experience in whatever industry that you're talking about, tech in particular.
Great. So, Peter, one question that has been asked multiple times on workplaces: how is the PR coverage in non-English speaking markets? How do you support that?
Yeah, so we don't really support that at this time, is the answer to that question. Yeah, that's a bit of a tougher one. We do have a client right now that's actually it's the heli skiing client, and they have a lot of customers in like Austria and Germany and German speaking countries, and we are talking about doing press release for them. In those cases, what we need to do is rely very heavily on the client and their people who speak that language, and so obviously the translation services need to happen, and we need to be basically dealing with coaching a person that speaks that language from on what they should say and do and how they should respond to media. But I think it's a tricky one, and I wouldn't want to sort of promise that we'd be able to do it. I would consider it on a sort of case-by-case basis, and we'd have to ask a lot of questions and really understand what kind of expertise are in the country or in the company to see if we'd be able to support it or not.
Okay, so I'm sure you can advise ICs who need those services just from a general PR perspective.
Yeah, definitely, and that's for sure. Happy to provide advice for free, even to at least give some guidance as to how to sort of go about it.
Great. So we have just one final question from Mark Patton. I think it's a simple one. It's when submitting a URL for a press release, can I tag suffix to track it in Google Analytics?
Yes, you can. Yeah, yeah. So you can add tracking UTM codes on any link that you put in. And then when you actually set up an email follow-up through the tool that I showed you, there's actually ways to add your analytics in there as well, so that everything basically that's sent out can be tracked 100%.
So just one question popped up. So it is by Peter Burson. What is the rough cost of syndication? Like, what is the estimate?
So the rough cost of syndication, I would say, starts anywhere from about $750, maybe for a local syndication, to more of a regional kind of statewide syndication in the U.S. Probably gets up to about $1,000, $1,200, and then national syndication could be in the $2,500, $3,000 range. So it sort of just depends on the size and on the audiences, but that's a rough idea.
Great. So I think that's great. So thank you, Peter, for a very insightful session, and thank you all for attending and asking questions. So we will continue to do more supplier webinars. We have 2 more coming up, one with ALM's new packages on SEO services and one on voice search with Vidushi. So please stay updated with the latest trends and offerings. I'll keep posting them on Workplace. If you want to cover anything specific as it relates to our suppliers or e-marketplace, or even if you have any recommendations on new suppliers, feel free to reach out to us. As always, we'll be posting the recording on our suppliers webinar channel. And till then, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you. Bye.
Everybody.